I am 78 years old. For over 5 decades, I designed homes for other people, beautiful homes. Homes with wide windows that caught the morning light. Homes with open kitchens where families would gather. Homes with gardens that bloomed every spring. Homes where children would grow up, fall in love, and one day bring their own children back to visit. I designed over 400 of them, and I never, not once, designed a life worth living inside my own. My name does not matter. My awards do not matter. The buildings still standing in 3 different countries do not matter. What matters is what I'm about to tell you, because I am running out of time to say it. And you, wherever you are, whatever age you still have time I no longer have. So please, listen carefully. I used to believe that a man is measured by what he builds. That was my religion. That was the first thought I had every morning and the last thought I carried into sleep every night. Build something that lasts. Build something people will see from the street and stop to look at. Build something that will still be standing long after you are gone. And I did. God help me, I did exactly that. But here is what nobody told me, what I was too proud and too busy to see on my own. While I was building for strangers, my own house was quietly falling apart. Not the walls, not the roof, not the structure, the people inside it. My wife used to leave a cup of tea on my desk every morning. She would place it gently, never interrupting, never complaining, and walk back out. For years, I saw that cup, but I never really saw her. I thought, she understands. She knows this work is important. She knows I am doing this for us. I was wrong. She was not leaving tea. She was asking for me to look up, to see her, to say, just once, that she mattered more than the blueprint on my desk. I thought I had time to tell her that. I was wrong. My son once asked me to come to his school play. He was 11 years old. He had a small part. I do not even remember what character. He had been practicing his lines in the hallway for 2 weeks. I could hear him through my office door. I told him I had a deadline. I told him I would make it up to him. Later never came. He is 47 years old now. We speak on the phone twice a year. Polite calls, short calls, the kind of calls where two people are careful not to say what they actually feel. I built that distance, blueprint by blueprint, year by year. You may be sitting somewhere right now thinking, this is sad, but it is not my story. I thought the same thing once. I thought I was different. I thought being exceptional at my work meant I was living an exceptional life. That is the most dangerous lie a successful person can believe. Because success at work is visible. You can photograph it. You can put it in a portfolio. You can point to it from a moving car and say, I made that. But what you lose along the way, that has no photograph. That leaves no visible ruin. It just quietly disappears. And one morning, you wake up at 78 years old, surrounded by a life that looks impressive from the outside and feels completely empty from within. I am not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I am telling you this because I see you. I see the version of you that is just beginning, or the version that is somewhere in the middle, working late, missing moments, telling yourself later, soon, when this project is done. Don't make my mistake. I grew up with nothing. And I mean that in the most literal way possible. My father was a laborer. My mother sewed clothes for neighbors to earn extra money. We lived in a small apartment where 3 children shared one room, and the walls were so thin you could hear everything. The arguments, the prayers, the silence that came after both. I hated that apartment, not because it was small, but because it felt like proof. Proof that we were less than. Proof that life had already decided what we were worth before we had a chance to decide for ourselves. So I made a decision very early. I was perhaps 14 years old. I was standing outside a large house at the end of our street. A house with high iron gates and a stone pathway and tall windows with curtains that moved in the breeze. I stood there for a long time, and I said to myself quietly, like a promise, I will build things like this, and no one will ever look at me the way people look at my father. That was the beginning. That was also, though I did not know it then, the mistake. I was accepted into architecture school on a partial scholarship. I worked nights to pay the rest. I slept 4, sometimes 5 hours. I ate poorly. I had no social life to speak of. But I did not care, because every hour of exhaustion felt like progress. Every sacrifice felt like a step away from that small apartment and a step towards something greater. I had a vision of myself, a future version, standing in front of a completed building, respected, admired, free. That image kept me going. For decades, that image kept me going. What I did not understand, what I could not see from inside that hunger, was that I was not just building a career. I was building a personality, a way of being in the world, a set of habits and beliefs so deeply wired into me that by the time I was 30, they were no longer choices. They were simply who I was. And who I was a man who worked, always, without apology, without pause. I met my wife during my second year of practice. She was warm in a way I had never experienced, generous, patient. She laughed easily and she listened deeply, and she had this way of making ordinary evenings feel like something worth remembering. Our early years were good, genuinely good. We were not rich yet. We lived simply. Some evenings we would sit on the small balcony of our apartment, eat whatever we could afford, and talk for hours. Those were, I now understand, the best years. But I could not see that then, because I was always looking forward, always at the next project, the next milestone, the next level that would finally make me feel like enough. I thought I had time to slow down and enjoy what we had. I was wrong. The commissions started coming in steadily by my mid-30s. Bigger projects, better clients. My name began to carry weight in certain rooms. People called me meticulous, visionary, dedicated. I wore those words like medals. My wife wore something else entirely. She wore the quiet exhaustion of a woman who raised two children almost entirely alone, who attended school events alone, who spent anniversaries either alone or across a dinner table from a man whose mind was somewhere else, on load-bearing walls, on material costs, on a client's impossible revision. She never screamed at me about it. That is the part that breaks me most when I think about it now. She just endured, patiently, lovingly. For years and years, she endured. And I told myself she was fine. I told myself she was proud of me. I told myself that providing well was the same thing as loving well. I was wrong. Those are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing. My daughter stopped sharing things with me when she was around 13. I did not notice immediately. That is the honest truth. My days were so full, my mind so occupied, that the slow withdrawal of a young girl from her father did not register as an emergency. It registered as a phase, a teenage thing, something that would pass. It did not pass. By the time she was 17, we were two people living under the same roof who had run out of things to say to each other, not out of anger, out of distance, a distance I had built steadily, invisibly, the way erosion works, so slowly you do not see it happening until the ground beneath you is already gone. I remember one evening, she must have been 15, she came to the doorway of my study. She stood there for a moment. I was at my desk, working. I looked up briefly and asked her what she needed. She said nothing. Never mind. And she walked away. I went back to my drawing. I have thought about that moment almost every day for the last 20 years. What was she going to say? What did she need from me in that moment that she could see, even at 15, I was not capable of giving? I will never know. That doorway, that brief pause, that never mind, it is the most expensive moment of my life, and it cost me nothing at the time. That is the cruelest part. I thought I had time to be a better father. Later, when things slowed down, later never came. Don't make my mistake. I was 61 years old when my wife got sick. It was not sudden. That is what people do not understand about illness. It rarely arrives all at once. It comes in small signs. A tiredness that does not go away. A weight loss you explain as stress. A doctor's visit that leads to another and then another, until one afternoon you are sitting in a white room under fluorescent lights and a calm-voiced doctor is saying words that rearrange your entire understanding of time. She had cancer, advanced, already spread. The doctor spoke about treatment options, about timelines, about quality of life. I heard the words, but I could not fully process them. Because in that moment, sitting next to the woman I had spent 33 years half ignoring, something cracked open inside me that I did not know was still capable of cracking. I reached over and took her hand. She looked at me. not with anger, not with blame, just with a kind of deep, tired recognition. Like she had been waiting a long time for that hand. Like some part of her had never stopped waiting. I thought I had time to hold that hand more often. I was wrong. We had 18 months. I want you to understand what 18 months feels like when you finally decide to show up fully for another person. It feels like standing in a room full of beautiful light, knowing the light is about to go out. I stopped working completely. For the first time in over 30 years, I closed my office, cancelled my projects, and stayed home. My colleagues were shocked. My clients were frustrated. A building I had been designing for 2 years had to be handed to another firm. I did not care. For the first time in my adult life, I did not care about the work. Those 18 months were the most present I had ever been in my life. I made her tea in the mornings, the way she had made mine for decades, placed gently, without interruption. I drove her to appointments. I sat beside her during treatments and held a book open that neither of us was really reading, just to have something to do with our hands. I listened to her talk about her childhood, stories I had never heard, or perhaps had heard and never truly absorbed. I watched old films with her that she loved, and I had always been too busy to sit through. I learned in those 18 months who my wife actually was, and that knowledge, arriving so late, paid for at such a price, is something I carry in my chest every single day like a stone. She passed on a Tuesday morning in October. The room was quiet. The light outside was grey. She had not been conscious for 2 days. I was holding her hand when it happened, the way you hold something you know you are about to lose, gripping slightly harder than necessary, as if pressure alone could keep a person in the world. It cannot. After the room emptied, after the doctors and the nurses had done what they needed to do, I sat alone beside her for a long time. And something happened in that silence that I have never spoken about to anyone. I did not cry. Not immediately. What I felt first was not grief. It was something sharper, something that cut in a direction grief does not usually cut. It was clarity, a brutal, unwanted, total clarity. I saw my life from the outside for the first time. Not as I had lived it, from the inside, where everything felt justified, where the deadlines were always urgent and the sacrifices always temporary, and the promises of later always felt like real plans. I saw it as it actually was. A man who had been given an extraordinary life, a loving partner, 2 children, decades of health and ability, and had spent most of it looking at blueprints. A man who had designed spaces for other families to live fully in, while his own family lived around him the way you live around a piece of furniture, working with it, accommodating it, but not really connecting with it. I had been furniture in my own home. That thought, I had been furniture in my own home, hit me with a force I cannot fully describe. It was not a metaphor I chose carefully. It arrived on its own. And once it arrived, I could not make it leave. My son flew in for the funeral. We had not been in the same room for almost 2 years. He is a quiet man now, reserved, self-sufficient in the way that children become self-sufficient when they learn early that depending on a parent is unreliable. He handled the arrangements with calm efficiency. He shook hands, accepted condolences, made sure everything was in order. He was exactly like me. And watching him move through that day, competent, contained, emotionally unreachable, I felt a grief inside the grief. Because I understood, perhaps for the first time, that I had not just been absent from his life. I had taught him how to be absent from his own. The shift that happened after she died was not dramatic. It was not a sudden awakening. It was quieter than that, slower. It was the experience of sitting in a house, a beautiful house, well designed, well furnished, and feeling it as what it truly was. Empty, not because she was gone, though that was part of it, but because I had never truly filled it while she was alive. I had occupied it. I had paid for it. I had improved it over the years. Better windows, a redesigned kitchen, a garden she always loved. But I had never truly lived inside it. A man who designs homes for a living spent 50 years failing to build a home. That was the truth I could no longer avoid. It was not a comfortable truth. It did not arrive with any relief or release. It arrived like a diagnosis, cold, precise, impossible to argue with. And from that truth, sitting alone in that quiet house, Everything I had believed about success and time and priority began, slowly, irreversibly, to collapse. Let me tell you what I believed for most of my life. I believed that time was something you managed, something you allocated, something you could move around like furniture, shift this here, push that there, and come back to the important things later when the urgent things were finished. I believed that the people who loved me would always be there. That love, once established, was a structure, something load bearing, something that could hold weight indefinitely without maintenance. I believed that providing was the same as being present, that paying for a good life was the same as living one, that building beautiful things professionally somehow compensated for what I was failing to build personally. Every single one of those beliefs was wrong. Not partially wrong, not wrong in a complicated way that requires nuance and discussion. Completely, fundamentally wrong. Here is the first truth. Time does not wait for you to finish your work. I know that sounds simple. I know you have heard some version of it before. But hearing a truth and understanding it, truly understanding it in your body, in your daily choices, are two entirely different things. I heard it. For decades, I heard it. People said it at funerals I attended. I read it in books I did not finish. I nodded at it the way you nod at something you already know. But I did not know it, because if I had truly known it, if it had lived inside me the way real knowledge lives, I would have behaved differently. Every single day I would have behaved differently. The gap between what we say we believe and how we actually live, that gap is where a life gets lost. Don't let your life get lost in that gap. Here is the second truth. The people in your life are not waiting for you. They are living right now, without you, moving through their days, forming themselves, building their inner world, and every day you are absent from that process is a day you cannot recover. Children do not pause their growing while you finish a project. They grow continuously, quietly. And one morning you look up from your desk and the small person who used to stand in your doorway is a grown adult who has learned somewhere along the way not to stand in your doorway anymore. Marriages do not stay warm on their own. They require presence, attention, ordinary moments shared without agenda, not grand gestures on anniversaries, not expensive holidays once a year. Tuesday evenings, Sunday mornings, a cup of tea placed on a desk, a look across a room that says, I see you. You are not invisible to me. Those are the materials a real life is built from. Not steel, not glass, not stone. Attention, presence. Time given willingly before it is demanded by crisis. Here is the third truth, and this one I need you to hear most carefully. Success is not the problem. Work is not the problem. Ambition is not the enemy. I do not want you to walk away from this believing that achievement is something to be ashamed of. It is not. I am proud of what I built professionally. Those buildings stand. People live inside them. That means something. But achievement without presence is just performance. You can perform success for an entire lifetime. You can win every professional award available to you. You can fill a room with trophies and a wall with degrees and a portfolio with work that genuinely, objectively matters, and still die feeling like you missed the point. Because the point was never the building. The point was never the project. The point was never the recognition or the revenue or the reputation. The point, the only real point, was the people sitting at your table, the person sleeping beside you, the child calling your name from another room. That was always the point. I thought I understood that. I was wrong. We tell ourselves stories about why we work so hard. I told myself I was doing it for my family, that the long hours and the missed dinners and the cancelled plans were all in service of giving them a better life. And perhaps there was some truth in that. In the beginning, when money was genuinely tight, that story was partially true. But at some point, and this is the part we never examine honestly, at some point the financial necessity ended and the emotional habit continued. I no longer needed to work 18 hours a day to provide for my family. But I kept working 18 hours a day because by then the work was not about them. The work was about me, about my fear of stillness, about my discomfort with intimacy, about the fact that in my office, with a problem to solve and a deadline to meet, I always knew exactly who I was and what I was supposed to do. At home, with real people who had real needs and real feelings, I was less certain. and uncertainty made me uncomfortable. So I returned again and again to the place where I felt competent: the office, the drawing board, the blueprint. A blueprint never asks you how you are feeling. A blueprint never needs you to sit quietly and simply be there. A blueprint has clear rules. Follow them and the structure holds. People do not work that way. Love does not work that way. I spent 50 years trying to apply architectural logic to human relationships. You cannot design your way into connection. You cannot plan your way into love. You can only show up, imperfect, uncertain, present, and let it be enough. I was too proud to show up imperfect. That pride cost me everything that actually mattered. There is a word in architecture: load bearing. It refers to the walls that actually hold the structure up. Remove a decorative wall and the house looks different. Remove a load bearing wall and the house collapses. Most people, and I was most people, spend their lives obsessing over the decorative walls: the title, the salary, the reputation, the size of the office, the make of the car, the address of the house, and we neglect the load bearing walls: the marriage, the presence with our children, the friendships we keep saying we will invest in when things slow down, the relationship with ourselves, our actual inner life, not the performance of productivity, but the quiet, honest truth of who we are when no one is watching. Remove the decorative walls. The structure survives. Neglect the load-bearing walls long enough, and everything collapses. Mine collapsed slowly, so slowly I did not see it happening, until I was sitting alone in a quiet house in October, holding a hand that had gone still, and understanding, with a completeness that was almost peaceful in its cruelty, that I had built the wrong things, for the wrong reasons, for most of my life. I am not telling you this to make you feel afraid. I am telling you this because fear, the right kind of fear, can save you. Not fear of failure. You have enough of that already. Every ambitious person does. Fear of the other kind of failure, the invisible kind. The kind that does not show up in performance reviews or bank statements or professional reputations. The failure that only becomes visible at the end, when the house is quiet, when the people are gone, when you finally have all the time in the world and nothing meaningful left to spend it on. That is the failure worth fearing. That is the failure worth changing your life to avoid. I designed over 400 homes in my lifetime. Beautiful homes. Homes filled with light and thought and care. And I am telling you, from this side of the road with full clarity and no illusions left to hide behind, none of it was worth what it cost me. Not one blueprint, not one award, not one building still standing in 3 different countries. None of it. Build the right things, while you still can, while they are still there, while there is still time to choose differently than I did. That is all I have to give you. That is everything.